Hey everyone, welcome back to the Therapy Minute. I'm Shira Davis, licensed clinical social worker. So we are going to continue on the segment that we were talking about yesterday, which is about anxiety. So we're going to do a couple of videos on different techniques for anxiety, right? So last video, we spoke about the concept of depersonalizing our anxiety. Right, I shouldn't even say our anxiety because it is not ours. It's something that is outside of ourselves, right? We are not anxious people. We are not having anxiety right now. We may be having a thought that's anxious, but we are intrinsically not anxious people. And we spoke about for the kids, the concept of coming up with that anger monster, right? What that looks like. That's something else outside of you. That is not you. That's the angry monster talking. And for adults, we're noticing, I'm having some anxious thoughts right now, but I am not anxiety. I am not anxious person, right? Okay, so we discussed that last time. Now, today we're going to discuss a technique, and it's called the stop technique. And this is also known as a thought blocking technique. Now, this is wonderful to use with anxiety. It's also great to use with any negative loop of thinking. It's even good to use, if you have a really negative thought going on in your head. Sometimes people use this concept if they're thinking about self-harm, wanting to hurt themselves. They can use this technique to kind of block the thought. Really, I like to use it for anxiety a lot, or for any negative thinking like, oh, I'm going to fail that test. Oh, I'm going to bomb the date tomorrow, whatever. Okay, so also if you're having any negative loop, we're constantly thinking about something over and over and over. Rumination, right? Worries on repeat. This is wonderful for that technique, for that issue. So this is the a thought blocking technique. It's called the stop technique. So what this basically works off of is the pink elephant syndrome. If you guys haven't heard of that, let me tell you what that is. Basically, if I tell you, don't think about a pink elephant, don't think about a pink elephant, don't think about a pink elephant, what are you thinking about right now? The pink elephant, right? So when we have a thought and we tell ourselves, no, don't think about it, don't think about it, you are going to think about it, hands down. It is going to increase your thought pattern on it. So typically, what do? People tend to do, one of two things when we have a thought that we don't want to think about. Either we do, no, don't think about it, don't think about it. And it comes back with the ferocity. Or we tend to just go down that rabbit hole and think about it on a loop over and over and over and over. So both of those, not very effective, right? So this is a great technique to stop that pattern of thinking. And the first step is the most important step. So step number one is we must acknowledge the thought. So let's say the negative loop inside our head is that I've got an interview tomorrow and it's going to be terrible. It's going to be horrible. I'm going to forget what to say. I'm going to forget, all of the things that I need to talk about in that interview, right? So that's our negative thought, for example, over here. So thought pops into our head. Oh God, tomorrow's the interview. It's going to be a disaster. So step number one, acknowledge the thought. So we say, I noticed I started worrying about the interview tomorrow. Step number two, we have to validate the thought, okay? So we have to say, listen, I understand why this is popping in my head now. This is a big interview tomorrow. I really want to get this job. It means a lot to me, so I'm thinking about it a lot. Step one, acknowledge. Step two, validate. Step three, here we go. You have to tell yourself, however, this thinking pattern is unhealthy, unproductive, ineffective. I'm going to give myself permission to put it aside so that I can go back to whatever I was doing before, whether that's working, dishes, laundry, exercising, hanging out with somebody, or just relaxing, right? So this thinking pattern is unhealthy, unproductive, ineffective. I'm giving myself permission to put it aside and go back to what I was doing before. Now, this technique is not magic fairy pixie dust, right? It doesn't just, you do it one time, bam, you're cured. You never have that thought again. You have to use this technique over and over and over again, because what happens is, typically, if we have a negative pattern of thinking, we've had that same habit for most of our lives. So your brain is working off of 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years of a habit, of a specific way of thinking and of dealing with stress or worries or, anything coming up in our future. And we are creatures of habit, okay? And that habit is so deeply entrenched in the connections in your brain, so tight. You have to work so hard to pull that apart and to replace it with a healthy thinking pattern. So yes, you are going to have to do this over and over and over again, because we're teaching a new habit. We're getting rid of that old negative way of thinking, negative pattern of behavior, of thought, and we're replacing it with a healthy one. So you're going to do this many times, and that's okay. Eventually, you're going to learn the lesson and the message of this new healthy habit. Okay, next time we're going to talk about a technique that kids can use, because sometimes kids find this a little bit difficult. So we're going to discuss a different technique that kids can use to kind of stop that pattern of thinking. All right, guys, wishing you well. Take care. Bye.